Your yeehaw. Let me hear a yeehaw.
Yeehaw! By the way, the laughter, it's encouraging. Is it encouraging or is it mocking me? I'm not sure. Come on, y'all.
We have a... There we go.
There it is. I ordered, say it again?
The ranch.
I ordered breadsticks with ranch dressing at Applebee's.
Your yeehaw. Let me hear a yeehaw.
Yeehaw!
Y'all. Today, Prince Harry and Hasan Minhaj dropped their episode of Hasan Minhaj's Doesn't Know podcast on Lemonada Media. They sat down to talk about AI, to talk about social media, safety by design, the Responsible Technology Youth Power Fund, Parents Network, and they had a lot of fun all at the same time. This was an extremely robust interview. That's the best way I can put it. I mean, there was something for everyone. If you like Harry's wit and humor, you got that. If you like his seriousness, you got that. If you like his endearing moments, you got that. If you like his moments with other people and the witty banter, you got that too. He gave us a little bit of everything, and it's apt because Hasan Minhaj opened up the interview noting how vulnerable Prince Harry is. Now, he did lead that into a joke, which we will get to, and Harry seemed to really enjoy that joke. But all at the same time, he was right. Even if he was leading into a joke, he was absolutely right. It's one of the reasons why Prince Harry's interviews are so popular and why so many people are endeared to him. It's because he has always shown up as himself. That is one of the reasons why, or a couple of the reasons why, I always enjoy Prince Harry's interviews. So when I saw he was sitting down with Hasan Minhaj, I did not know what to expect. I knew Hasan was a comedian, but I really wasn't familiar with his brand of comedy outside of skits that he's done or little promo things that he's done that I've seen on Instagram. But I've never checked out the podcast until now, and I did subscribe after watching this. I really enjoyed this. I also saw that he has an interview with Jasmine Crockett, so I'm going to be watching that as soon as I finish recording this. So I wanted to give you guys my opinion on this interview, as well as a little quick brief recap. If you have not seen this, there will be spoilers. I mean, listen, it's a recap. So even if you listen to me first, you're going to get a whole lot and more if you just go back and watch that. I'm not going to ruin it for you. But I'm just going to be giving you my raggedy old opinion like I always do. But there will be a couple of spoilers. This is available on Lemonada Media, on their website, as well as Apple Podcasts, everywhere podcasts are offered. And it's also offered right here on YouTube. And I'm going to tag it in the sources section. So you can go and watch it full out and give them the views. I would really prefer if people could do that. Just go check it out so that they know we watched and we enjoyed. And more podcasts will vie to get Harry on there. So we want more interviews. We got to give them the views. So anyway, we're going to get into all of that and more. So let's get started. Once again, thank you so much for clicking on my video. And if you're returning, welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be recapping Hasan Minhaj's interview with Prince Harry for his Hasan Minhaj Doesn't Know podcast on Lemonada Media. The title of this interview is There Is No Free Will on Social Media. And honestly, they got into a lot. I mean, that's a pretty brief title, but it does not encompass nearly everything that they talked about. There was so much information shared. And it makes sense why this has been a primary topic for Harry and Meghan's platform. And he explained why. He recognized when he and Meghan sat down, they got back to the US and they sat down to decide how were they going to devote their time and what were they going to work on first. He said that there were a lot of things that they could have dived into right out the gate that would have been a little bit more aligned with their platform. But when they pulled back and looked at what's causing the most harm and where can we lend the weight of our platform and put it behind those movements, social media and the internet and AI technology as a whole was where they were led to. It makes complete sense. Now, we saw the beginnings of this a little bit with the Time 100 chats. They really did some interviews, but they really did some deep dives that really showed what they were all about. And since then, I believe that was in 2021. And since then, for the past few years, we have seen that evolve into this huge, amazing platform and just topic that has been on the tip of everybody's lips because they put their weight behind it. That's what you do at your platform. It's one of the things that I love most about them is that they put their platform or they put things on their platform for giving it the world stage, for exposure, and it gets the conversation going. It gets the movement's momentum and it helps create solutions and resolutions. So we got a little bit more insight into how he and Meghan got into this space and what they want to do with it and what could and could not be on the horizon for them. And we'll get into that too. Now, again, there were some fun parts of this interview and some very serious parts. I want to get into the summary of the meat and potatoes first, and then I want to end with some of the fun stuff. I want us to end on an extremely high note. So we open up the interview with Hasan Minhaj complimenting Prince Harry on his vulnerability in interviews, but specifically in Spare. And then he teased him because
is your vulnerability. You've always been one to share how you feel. And you were really vulnerable in your memoir, Spare. For my everyday casual looks, I go to TK Maxx, the discount store. I was particularly fond of their once-a-year sale when they'd be flush with items from Gap or J. Crew, items that had just come out of season or were slightly damaged. Bro, I'm sorry you had to go through that.
I know. You know what? It was hard. It's now a special place. Forms a special place in my memory.
And Prince Harry served it right back to him by saying, TK Maxx holds great memories from his past for him. And I bet it does. They had some good deals, apparently, from what he described. But I wanted to start with this because, one, it was funny. But he's right. Hasan is right. Harry is an excellent interviewee, but he's also a very vulnerable person. He just puts it out there. And that is what living without shame, but just ownership looks like. We also get into some of the conversation around the benefits, but mainly the drawbacks of social media, and not necessarily social media technology and AI as a whole, but it's the boundaries around them and how essentially it is the Wild Wild West. Prince Harry described it as lawless, and he's right. There are very, very, very few laws and the ability for government to intervene as it stands now when it comes to social media, the internet, technology, AI as a whole. There are very few things that cover the vast amount of ails that could come from these programs, these websites, these platforms. And Prince Harry and Meghan have been championing safety by design. That is something I also champion, and it's the most plausible solution. If the platforms were held responsible and accountable, then we wouldn't have nearly as much devastation and nearly as many problems. And that's not just for AI and technology. That's just common sense, because every single industry needs to operate within boundaries and margins. It's how we stay alive and stay safe.
The solution is safety by design, which is a relatively easy thing to do, but it's just being neglected. What effectively destroys kids' self-esteem, kills their sleep, kills their independence.
Yeah.
The very thing that supposedly connected people has now created more isolation than ever before.
Prince Harry said that he believes men specifically have made huge progress around openly speaking about mental health and wellness. He's also talked about how that has destigmatized the mental health conversation and mental illness conversation. However, social media, while it does create safe spaces for these conversations to happen, it is also what's hampering progress in that specific area, namely with red pill content. This is absolutely correct. Red pill content has gotten out of control. A couple of years ago, someone said, Sharion, I think you should create a Rumble. And I had never heard of what that was. But at the time, I can only speak for what happened in 2022. I don't know what it's become since then. But my experience was I checked out the link they sent me, and I looked at some of the things that were being promoted as, as favorable content. And I was taken aback. At the time, I don't know what it's become. I don't know if they've gotten it under control, but at the time, every single video that was initially pushed to me with no information, I hadn't clicked on anything. So there was nothing that I fed the algorithm for Rumble. Everything that was pushed to me was absolutely shocking. I read that stuff and I was like, this looks like a conservative playground, but for extremists. Again, I don't know what else it can be. I assume it's probably algorithmic like every other social media site. So had I used it, I'm sure I would have begun seeing things that were in line with what I wanted to see. But the fact that I hadn't put anything into the program and immediately it pushed out the most extreme conservative stuff it could, shocked me. I said, oh no, this doesn't seem like my type of place. No gracias. Now, hopefully it's become better since then. But the reason I bring that up is because Prince Harry noted the red pill content, or just that kind of dangerous content. And Hasan Minhaj later pulls back into that, or draws back into that same topic by saying social media sites have found new ways, or they consistently find new ways to make girls hate themselves and hate their bodies, and for boys to hate girls. That should literally be social media's tagline, because that is correct. I have been on social media since all we had was AOL chat rooms. I have literally seen it evolve. I was 11 when I got my first user account on AOL, and I was in chat rooms, and I have seen how social media has changed. And even back then, even way back in the 90s, that was a problem. Now, I was in kid chat rooms, so we had chat monitors and moderators. So if we said anything that was even remotely out of pocket, they kick you out the room. And there were screeners in the rooms that I was allowed in. You had to put in all this information about who you were, how old you were, et cetera. And it was tied to your account. So if I had done anything crazy or said anything crazy, they might have alerted my account holder, because all of this was through AOL, where we were all subscribed and paying for. So my mom or dad might have seen anything out of pocket I was saying. That was probably Gen 1. That was first iteration. And things have changed. The restrictions were lifted. Everybody could just talk to everybody and say whatever they wanted to say. You can have private IMs and all kinds of stuff. And now we know that has somehow formed into social media, which has become a playground and a cesspool for nonsense. So at the same time, while social media creates a lot of open spaces for us to have these conversations and to work on chipping away at the stigmatization around mental health, especially when it comes to men, it's a double-edged sword, as Prince Harry said. It also has the potential, and it absolutely acts on this, to be very harmful. And the harm at this time is outweighing the good. They also went on to say, while social media has normalized mental health convos, it's a leading cause of mental anguish and mental illness. So it's kind of like pick your poison, but we don't have to. We genuinely don't have to. We have the ability, if safety by design becomes normalized and becomes widely accepted and implemented, and legislation begins to reflect safety by design. If that were to happen, we could have all the good out of the internet and social media, and we could protect ourselves from the bad. They just don't want to slow down their innovation. That's pathetic to me, and that shouldn't be acceptable for the people in power by any means. Anyway, so Prince Harry then gets into the conversation about safety by design. He says it is a practical way to keep users, but especially young people, safe. The platforms should build in safety measures. Platforms cite unintended consequences regarding suicide and harm, but they take zero responsibility. They have a very laissez-faire perspective when it comes to the harm and the detriment that they have caused specifically to teens. And even when faced with the amount of suicides that their platforms have initiated, they're somewhat cold. They deflect responsibility while feigning acceptance or feigning remorse, but it's not real. Hell, they showed so many clips of Mark Zuckerberg, he barely even blinked. Like, he didn't even seem like he cared. He just seemed like he was more so worried about his reputation or kind of assuaging them in the moment. Just like, well, it's unintended consequences, but that's kind of the cost of innovation. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And it feels like this is the virtual version of the rules of OSHA are written in blood. This is like the virtual version of that, because as we see the impact of what social media is doing to young people, but everybody, and I'll get into that later. It's not just young people, but they are the most vulnerable, which is why they are the focus. But once we have seen the many ways social media can be harmful, why we aren't putting up barricades in those areas and just using smart, logical thinking when it comes to the use and the abilities that people have on these apps, especially when it comes to ages, is beyond me. It doesn't have to slow innovation, because what you could be doing is exploring the many ways that this could be useful, but in a protected, safe, and restricted space. You don't have to make everything available to children or to young people or people who are not ready cognitively to take on the responsibility of having access to pretty much everyone in the world. You don't have to give them that much access to continue with innovation. You could literally restrict the people who are vulnerable while still seeking innovation with the people who are responsible. There could literally just be a divide and a separation, as with anything. There's a reason on movies they have a rating, because I hate to say this, because there are people out here who took 5-year-olds to see Waiting to Exhale. Hey, mom. Like, and there are people out here who took their kids to see Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society, and then they got up and went to preschool the next day. So like, you can't use it up. You can't leave it up to adults to always be responsible, because they might not recognize, or they might not have the same limitations that a doctor might recommend or mental health professional might recommend for a child to have. Not every parent is going to understand the gravity of things. And most parents, I'll say, don't even understand how or what to look for because they themselves are not experts in the field, which is why, again, the experts in the field should be the ones to put up these barricades and these restrictions because they understand the harm that could potentially be done. So Prince Harry and the Safety by Design, and Meghan and the Safety by Design initiative is really the only smart and logical way we can move forward while still not hampering innovation. But if you ask me, we are trudging ahead forward at full speed. But if you ask me, if we had to pick an extreme, slow down innovation or slow down suicides and death, I feel like that's a no-brainer. But that's just me. Call me crazy. So Prince Harry notes that social media is the very thing that is touted as the impetus for connecting people. That's always what they say. It connects people, it brings people together. But then he noted that it's the very thing that's creating isolation within people. And then he created an analogy, or he noted an analogy that I hadn't considered before. I used to work in IT. I worked in a business IT company, and I've met a lot of technicians, a lot of AI people, or people who worked on AI, excuse me. And he made a connection that I hadn't even considered, and he's absolutely right. So he says, there are a lot of people, not all, before y'all get mad and start yelling at Harry. He didn't say everybody, but he did say there were a lot, and he is right. There were a lot of people who code these programs. And because of the nature of their work or because of the nature of their interests or et cetera, they may be more introverted or isolated than most people. Now, listen, technology isn't a very social job for a lot of people. There are aspects of it that are very social. There's a lot of technicians in bullpens and people who work together on large teams. But for the most part, coding itself can be a very isolating type of role. And so people who are drawn to that are often okay with being alone, which is what he noted. And he says they've created programs that tend to that aspect of their personality. However, those programs then become very popular amongst the majority. So these programs that are now being pushed to the majority are geared toward isolated people. And so in order to get the most out of these programs, people tend to isolate, which is what the program kind of pushes. And then isolation becomes the norm. I had not even thought of that. He's absolutely right. Even for people in the company that I worked for, the technicians who worked in the bullpen, they still had their own pods. So they could talk if they wanted to, but they did not need each other to do anything regarding their job. They didn't need to do anything. Most of them decided to work from home because they didn't need to even see anybody. For those who worked alone, we discouraged them from working from home every day, although they were allowed to. And the reason for that was because no one should really be isolated 100% of the time. Even if you come here and you just want to wear casual clothes or whatever, as long as you're not showing anything we don't want to see, you can come in and just be as you are. But we really don't want you to isolate. We don't want you to become one of those people that are tapping away in their basement. And there's a reason for that. It's because people who are in jobs that are isolated in that nature, they're prone to isolation in other areas. You're prone to being used to being alone. And so when you're creating programs, you're not creating programs who are unlike yourself. You're creating programs that make sense to you. And so even in that way, these programs are a bit biased. They lean towards introverts. And if you're not an introvert, but you want to use the app, which you are being told is to connect with people, then you become physically introverted in your real world, but virtually you're together. I don't think there's a good benefit to that. Yeah, isolate yourself in the real world, but at least you get to see each other's avatar. It's a double-edged sword. And Prince Harry consistently reiterated that and gave example after example after example. I can't see, I know the why, but just follow me here. I do not understand how people who have a soul who work in these industries, and most of them don't, I don't understand how those who have a soul can hear an interview like this and hear the things that Prince Harry has said, listen to the people who are part of the Parents Network, listen to the speeches Harry and Meghan have given, the data they've given, the interviews they've given, particularly the Time 100 chats where all of those experts weighed in and say, well, but innovation. It just doesn't add up to me. And we shouldn't necessarily rely on them. Legislation should absolutely support the best interests of society, which is keeping them alive. And everything just seems to be moving at a snail's pace, except for technology, which is trudging right ahead without any consideration of safety measures whatsoever. So then we move into the conversation of how old do you think a person should be before they use social media? This is a hot topic. I was holding my breath because, again, I'm fully aware of how people look to argue and yell and scream and cry about anything Harry does. This is a very sensitive topic for people who are super, super likable and super unlikable. Like, this is a very divisive topic, and I have seen people argue. I don't get that aspect, but whatever. The conversation comes up. Now, this was the part of the interview I kind of wanted Hasan to kind of straighten up, and he eventually did, but I really wanted him to get serious a little bit. And I actually can't tell. He has a dry wit. So he might have been serious, but it didn't come off like he was being serious. When he asked Prince Harry that, Harry bounced back to him and was like, how old do you think? And Hasan says 35. And he kept saying 35. That, to me, that's a bit unreasonable. And he kept saying it. And then finally Prince Harry was like, okay, let's get serious. And he did. Thankfully, he locked in, but it was a little distracting at first. I'm just going to be real. But Prince Harry noted that there is a difference between how old a parent thinks their kid should be, because obviously a parent knows their child, but then also there should be a limit from the platforms themselves. Just like everything else, everything should have an age limit. And I hadn't even considered that, but he's right. These things should have a minimum age requirement, kind of like carnival rides or just any kind of like theme park rides have a height requirement. I'm pretty sure when they first started implementing height requirements, people lost their shit, but they were happy to not see their 5-year-olds falling out of the Titan or whatever. That wasn't around at the time. But just the point that I'm making is they were happy to keep their kids alive. So eventually they got over it. I remember seeing news clippings from before I was born, but I remember seeing news clippings in one of my courses where we looked at the outrage behind people protesting that they had to wear seatbelts and that you could not have an open container in a moving vehicle that you were driving. And the outrage that people had in those news broadcasts and in those newspaper clippings was shocking. Like, things that you're supposed to use to keep safe, they're just like, I don't want to be safe though. Who the hell are you to tell me to stay alive? And it's just like, good God, this is why you shouldn't be in charge of these decisions as an individual. These choices should not be individualistic. So I love that Harry noted there should be an age limit that is required by the platform itself, because the experts understand the harm, the potential harm that could be done. Well, as they continue, Harry thinks 21 would be a good age for a person to start to use social media. And perhaps children, minors, should actually have old school phones, which people, I didn't know they called them dumb phones, but Hasan said those are called dumb phones now. And Harry responds with, that's funny because smartphones are dumbing people down. And he's right. Like, again, this is such a good interview, but he's right. Smartphones, ChatGPT, I have my whole beef. Y'all have a whole video. It's called Super Intelligence or Super AI Intelligence or something like that, where I go on that whole tangent about the harm of letting AI think for you. But so I won't repeat, but I agree. 21 is an excellent age to start using social media. Now, for us millennials who kind of had, we were the canary in the coal mines. We had access to social media, the majority of us, for a long time. And our parents could see most of it, though. We didn't use a social media that had a whole bunch of inboxes. A lot of our social media, it might have had an inbox and a message box, but none of it was hidden. None of it was encrypted. Like, we couldn't lock our parents out of most of that when we were at the vulnerable ages. Around the time most of us, now there are different ages for millennials, but for most of us, around the time we got access to some of the heavy hitters in social media, like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, we were 19 and up for most of us. Not everybody. Some of us were a little bit younger, but what I'm saying is we weren't infants. We weren't children. We were older adolescents and young adults. We were at an age where even if we weren't fully ready, it wasn't as rampant and it wasn't as advanced that we were as vulnerable as kids today who have access to these things and have access to these private inboxes and these encrypted ways of communicating both ways and all these different disappearing boxes and disappearing inboxes and disappearing messages. It's chaotic. And I don't even know what I would have been doing had I had access to that when my brain was mush, just complete mashed potatoes sliding around in my skull. I can't imagine. And so I do get what he's saying. 21 is a great age because that's around the age I was when I first got a Twitter. No, I was 23. I was 23 when I first got a Twitter. And then I was 25 when I first got an Instagram. So I was an adult and my brain was fully formed when I got an Instagram. And when I got Facebook, it didn't do all of the things that it does now. When I got a Facebook, it was literally writing on walls and commenting and putting things as like your little comment, like what's up today or whatever. And you had like a status. That's it. And so 21, being that I was around the age that he's suggesting when I got social media, the type of social media we have today, I feel like that's probably the only thing that kept me safe. Like genuinely. And so a lot of people I've seen comment like 21 is way too old for social media. Is it? Because again, we survived those harrowing years without it. And we did just fine. I know that that was a different time, but it doesn't have to be. We could find a happy medium. So I think 21 is a great age. He also mentioned that even parents who withhold social media and these technology in general from their kids, it's harder on the kids because then they go to school and they're essentially exiled from their social circles, or they're not as included in their social circles because everyone else has access to these things and they don't. So it is a hard middle ground because you don't want your child to be the only one or one of the few. You don't want them to be isolated. You want them to be able to keep up with society as it stands now and be able to socialize in ways that make sense. If we continue to implement millennial age restrictions on Gen Z, Gen Alpha kids, we do stand the risk of isolating them from their social groups. And so it's way more pressure and responsibility on parents than it should be. It's kind of like telling parents, hey, we're going to release a whole bunch of new food items, new drinks, new food, new medicines, and we're going to leave it up to you to test this stuff and determine how much your kids should have. We're not going to give you any other information. Should your kid have one pill or half a pill? Trial and error. Did your kid die today? Well, then 2 pills was maybe too much. It's the same process, but in a different industry. We would think that was completely asinine if something was released to the market and they told us to figure it out as we go. And yes, there is potential harm that could be caused and it could be fatal. But figure it out as you go. That's up to the parents. That's ridiculous. I feel like we're trudging towards a mass exodus from social media, and I welcome that. And I say that as someone whose quote career or whatever is social media for the time being. I absolutely welcome that. I'm happy to post a newsletter and mail it to y'all instead of using YouTube if that's the case. Like if this would help keep kids safe, where they say Sharion and everybody else get offline, send us newsletter. Hey, send me your address. I got you. I would happily oblige, but something has to be done. They go on to say that, and this is Prince Harry, he went on to say that gone are the days of your kid being under your roof and knowing they're safe. Now, I think that was one of those images, that analogy, or honestly, that's not an analogy, that statement. It was one of those images that made it very, very real to me in a different way. I recognize that this is very real. I have watched all of the Parent Network videos about every parent there and their child's experience and their experience. So I do know that it is very real. I do know that it is very different or dangerous. And as a person with nieces and nephews who span the age groups, I have nieces as young as 2 and a niece as old as 19. I get it. However, that image in my mind, it kind of hit home. And I feel like that's going to tug at a lot of heartstrings for a lot of parents as well. Because for the most part, when your kid is at home, they're safe as hell. Because where are they safer than with their parents? Behind a locked door within a home that I manage and protect. To find out that that's not enough, that's heartbreaking. And it's dangerous for the child, but it just keeps coming back to the parent for me. And I actually got choked up a little bit when I watched that part because I was like, how defeating is that for a parent to be like, I can't even keep my child safe at home. What more can I do? And that's the question I keep coming back to, is like, they're putting so much undue responsibility on the parents to operate in a masterful way with very little tools and information. In any other industry, that would be seen as absolutely crazy. Prince Harry doubles back and says there is a lawlessness in technology and they aren't incentivized to operate responsibly because they cite censorship and restrictions slows the progress of innovation. And Hasan noted that the tech oligarchs are in full control. They know the risks. They just don't care. And they're looking to see how much they can get away with. That part stuck out to me because given the actions of our current president, that's his whole MO. How far can I go? As long as you let me go, I'm going to run full speed ahead until there's a wall there. And no one is putting up walls. And I say that to say it's the exact thing in technology. How much can we get away with? Sure, we have to sit in a few uncomfortable meetings and we have to be told about ourselves, but then we get to go back to our billion-dollar homes and close ourselves off from the world and keep doing the next thing that's going to kill their kids. We don't care. We just have to do this every few years. Oh, well. It's really sad that they don't have real responsibility in any other industry. If you created something that killed people, you would have to answer for that at the very least. Anyway, Harry went on to note that there is an astounding lack of legal protections around social media. And this is the part that also stuck out to me too, is again, it kind of circles back into they're seeing how far they can go. But even when things go up the chain of command and hit legal, there's nothing done about it. It's almost like the legal departments are just there so that they don't get sued on the off chance that they do, but most people don't have the resources to sue these platforms and they know it. So essentially it's like, we're here for appearances only. We're not actually trying to keep the public safe. We're teaching this company how to skirt legality. That's really what we're doing. And I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. Again, that's where the legislation aspect comes in. Because again, we're leaving it up to these individual people and entities to operate with the greatest good in mind, and they don't give a damn. If you let drug dealers sell their source or their supply on a mass scale with no restrictions, they would. And then if the government said, well, how much is too much cocaine? That's up to you to decide. Like, we would probably all be dead because you can't do that, because we have to have a governing entity that protects us. And like Prince Harry said, people expect their government to protect them, and it's not. There's a lot of reasons for that, but for the sake of not getting sued, I won't go down that rabbit hole. But Hasan mentions the speed of digital media is outpacing analogous media processes and laws. Hasan noted that how everything is being recorded, even kids at their personal recitals, at their schools, other parents are recording their own child, but they're also recording other people's kids. And it's making it virtually impossible to fully remove your child from these publicly shared spaces. How do you protect your children and their anonymity? How are you going to move forward if your child's image and likeness isn't even in your control? Harry made a point to be cautious about posting your children, especially with the surge in AI. I have seen so many things about AI manipulating people's images to do and say and behave in certain ways. I think I told y'all before when I got on this platform and I was completely beside myself. I was near tears when I saw what people had done with Taylor Swift, Cardi B, Meghan Thee Stallion, like a couple of celebrities, and Meghan was one of them. And they were creating images and deep fake videos of them doing things that they would never do, and things that no one would be allowed to post on a public platform if it were real. And I was disgusted. I've seen so many thumbnails of people who are saying horrible things about Harry and Meghan, and then they create these thumbnails using AI where they create these people that look very similar. If you did not look at Harry and Meghan often, or like as much as I do, and you just scroll past that, you might think that was real, that's so violating to me. But they use AI to create these videos and photos and pictures and things of them doing things they would never do. And it's essentially, they're stealing their likeness. It's violating. And thankfully, several celebrities have sued companies that have allowed this. I think OpenAI got sued. A couple of other companies got sued, and they had to take those things down. But like Prince Harry is saying, it's almost like running upstairs to a flooding bathroom, a tub that's overflowing, and grabbing a mop. Like, it's already out of control when you could have just turned off the faucet. Exactly. Let's be proactive, not reactive. And then, as far as the people recording other people's kids, social media has created such an environment where it is the norm to record strangers. And to me, that will never be normal. I do not like when people do that. I immediately put my hand up in front of people's phones when they even look like they're recording me. I am such an asshole with that because I don't need you recording me. You don't know who I know, and you don't know who looking for me. Why would you record me and give up my address or where I'm living or where you saw me? And they noted the same thing for kids. Why would you post, where a kid is, where they go to school? It's insane to me. Something else I've seen, for those of you on TikTok, you've probably seen this. It's been everywhere. Teachers posting to social media at work in their classrooms. Now, there was a moment, and there are a few people who do it this way. There's a moment where what they were doing was just showing their lessons and showing themselves, and it wasn't distracting from their work. Okay, cool. But now teachers are showing the children and they're getting fired, rightfully so. And teachers are putting up videos of them at school with kids. And then the rest of their feed is them doing adult things. So then on their TikTok grid, you have them posting adult content and wearing adult contraptions. And then the next video is someone's child. And then you go right back to them putting on these inappropriate contraptions. Like, I would be livid. I would be absolutely livid. And we're seeing more of that, where social media is now creeping into safe spaces like medical offices, hospitals, nurses are now posting and getting fired. Where's the line here? And I get the benefits of having things documented, but this isn't documentation. This is content. And those are two different things. I would not want someone recording. I actually saw a nurse when I went and had my surgery. I saw a nurse walking down the hall doing a live, and she wasn't in anybody's room. So she was in the open space, but she was doing a live. And it was time for me to walk around the facility because I had surgery earlier that day and they make you walk. And it was time for me to walk. And I was like, I'm going to wait till she's done. Because first of all, I looked like I had surgery. And I had been beat up. My bun was to the side. My lips were chapped. I didn't want anybody seeing me like that, but it ran the risk of me being seen that way. And I wanted to wait. And that shouldn't have been a decision I had to make because I feel like when you get to work, phones down, not off, because we live in a world, in a country that does not restrict access to guns. We do need our phones because at any point shit could pop off. So we do need them for safety reasons, but I don't think social media should be anything that's being used during the workday, or at least when you're on the premises. I think that's a fair separation. Hasan mentioned that he feels things could improve if there were a little bit more friction when it comes to access, like putting the candy on the top shelf. And again, this kind of comes back to individual platform responsibility, and that doesn't work, because I get what he's saying, but that has to be done on a mass scale, and that has to be done through legislation. That can't be done based on what each app thinks is fair, because as Prince Harry noted, they're putting it on the bottom shelf for a reason. They're trying to get users hooked, and the younger, the better. So they're doing it on purpose. They know the risk and they're feeding into it. This is when Prince Harry noted something really interesting. He talked about Reuters putting out an article about Meta's written policies regarding their chat box, saying that their chat box could be sensual and flirt with children. And some of the examples they posted of things that this chat box saying to kids as young as 8, my jaw was on the floor. I could not believe that. I'm not going to go on a tangent, and I was almost about to. Y'all heard me take the deep breath, but just a little bit. I already have an issue with how much adult dialogue and imagery is put into kids' programming outside of social media, but like the things that are slipped into certain Disney movies and the things that are slipped into Pixar movies. And I'm like, okay, listen, adults have so much content. It would not kill us to take 2 to 3 hours out of our day to watch something that is 100% innocent. We don't need adult jokes. We don't need jokes that we think are going over kids' heads, because guess what? They're not. And if it does go over their kids' head, they're going to recognize that it was something different, and they're going to go find out what it is. And most of them aren't going to ask their parents, who can give them an answer that's child and age appropriate. They're going to go ask their friends. They're going to go look it up online. And thanks to social media and the internet, they can just go look it up when they go in their rooms. And now you cannot control what access they have and what information they just got. It's dangerous to keep blurring the lines between minors and adults and their content. Kids deserve content that is safe for them to view. Kids deserve content where they're not sneaking in curse words and sneaking in sexual innuendos and things like that. Some of the movies that I watched as a kid, I've watched since I was an adult, and I have been like, what the hell? Who signed off on this being in a kid's movie? Like, could you not just go take care of yourself at home and leave that side of you there and come to work and concern yourself with kids? Like, do you have to make everything sexual? If you are to the point where you can't even make a screenplay without being sexual, or you can't draw an animated figure without giving him a crotch bulge, then you need some help. And you damn sure shouldn't be working in the kid space. There is a space for you, by all means. But slipping things like that into kids' imagery and kids' content is just wrong to me. There is a time and a place and a way that kids need to be exposed to the different things in this world. And that is up to their parents to decide, not up to a movie to tell them things that they may not be ready to know or see or learn about. And so I say that to say social media is the big problem. But I also think there is an undercurrent of why this has even begun and why this is happening. And it's because there's a lot of pedophiles who are in spaces with kids or centered around kids because that's where they want to be. Pedophiles want to be around children, and they want to be in kid environments because that's what they're sickly and disgustingly attracted to. And so when we don't protect our kids on a broad scale, like Prince Harry is suggesting, through legislation that protects our kids from things like that, and there aren't several layers of filters before things reach a mass audience of children, we will continue to have experiences like that, where people are slipping in dick pics on the Little Mermaid cover of the cassette tape or the VHS tape, little things like that, yeah, sure, it was kind of hidden, but the impetus behind that is like, okay, what were you getting out of that? The fact that you were getting anything out of exposing a kid to that, even if you thought it was below the radar, is sick, and you shouldn't be working in a kid space. Anyway, social media has only made it more easy to access kids for these individuals. So they're not just in writers' rooms. They're not just in animation rooms. They're not just coding. They're now in inboxes. They're now posing as kids themselves to have conversations, to invite children to meet them, things like that. It's pretty scary. So Prince Harry also noted that, or not Prince Harry, the interview put up this statistic. It said the NSPCC cites Snapchat as the app most used for grooming. I'm not surprised because Snapchat has those disappearing images. That's not an app I ever used before, but I've heard of how it works. You post something and it goes away, and it has kind of become a breeding ground for grooming. Now, we also saw another statistic that the TikTok algorithm pushes kids towards dangerous and harmful mental health content. This is where I actually got really irritated because it shows TikTok CEO Shu Chu talking about how safe, and I think he was at a Senate hearing, I believe that's where he was. He talks about how safe TikTok is for kids as young as 8. They specifically use the age of 8. That is important to remember. Shu Chu talks about TikTok's algorithm. There are so many checks and balances, and what an 8-year-old would see is so different than what an adult would see. An 8-year-old will be safe on TikTok. Later, Shu Chu sits down with Dealbook and does an interview. And the host asks, "Are your kids allowed on TikTok?" He says, "No, they're too young." And thank God for good interviewers, because the host then goes, "Oh, how old are your kids?" Shu Chu almost didn't even want to answer. He smirked and he laughed, and you could tell he got hot under the collar, and he turns around stuttering, 8 and 6. So wait a minute, back up, Mr. Chu. The TikTok algorithm's supposed to be so safe for 8-year-olds, but you yourself don't want your 8-year-old on it. And then they note, Hasan Minhaj notes that, I think it was Erickson, I can't remember, Isaacson, wrote a book about Steve Jobs, and he's interviewing Steve Jobs for this book. And he says he notes that Steve Jobs' kids don't have screens in front of them. So he asks him, "Do your kids have iPhones and iPads?" He said, "No, they're too young." again. So again, anyone, a chef, I don't trust skinny chefs. And this is the equivalent of a skinny ass chef. I don't trust people who won't consume their own product. Because why is it safe for me, but not for you? There was another statistic that was posted that Instagram chat box has helped teens plan suicides. I don't want to put too much out there, but I went through a little depressive episode when I was a teenager. And I was safe because I was surrounded by my family from spiraling because I'd lost a friend who he died in a drunk driving accident. And I was just completely devastated. I cannot imagine if me scrolling and looking at the typical sad shit, because I was typically sad. And so I can imagine an algorithm being like, this heifer look like she on the edge. Let's give her something to push. Jesus Christ. That's terrifying, especially at that age where you're irrational. You don't have the ability to truly weigh pros and cons, and you don't really understand the gravity of your actions. You haven't developed that part of your brain yet. And being irrational is just part of being a teen, and feeling invincible is also just part of being a teen, which is why they have to be saved and protected from themselves. I can't imagine if I had access to something like that. My mom wouldn't have known. My mom is not an IT expert. My dad is not an IT expert. Y'all should have seen how they were so panicked when I tried to show them my Zynga. It was a blog, and I tried to show them how to log on, and child, smoke was coming out of their little ears. They had the mental equivalent of bumper cars. They were just bumping into everything. Now what I do? I log in where? They would not have known how to truly check and see what I had been looking at or looking up or engaging in at all. At all. Anyway, Prince Harry went on to say that he thinks eventually things will lead to parents just outright disallowing their kids to access AI or social media. And like I said at the beginning of this recap, I do believe so as well. I think we are headed towards a mass exodus from social media for children, and I fully support it. I am a 38-year-old woman. I don't need to be engaged in the same conversations and in the same group settings as teenagers. They don't need to hear what I have to say. If I'm speaking to teenagers, I will curate my language and content and topics for them, not the other way around. I don't want them to try and stretch themselves to understand me in this place in my life. I need to be minimizing what I say and monitoring what I say when I know that they are present. Social media has made it impossible for me to know who I am talking to at any given time. Not YouTube. Now, that's something YouTube has gotten well, is my analytics tell me how old people are. And through their setup process, you can really gear your channel towards the right age group, but not everybody operates on good faith or in good faith. So some people know what they're saying is inappropriate for kids, and they're targeting kids. So it's again, a double-edged sword. The individualistic aspect of it is, if you're a good person, then you use this platform the right way. The problem is there are a lot of non-good people who use these same platforms, and they know exactly how to exploit it to fly below the radar and hit their target. That's the problem. Hasan Minhaj said that he hopes the next decade is defined by collective action. I agree. And that kind of falls in line with what Prince Harry said. He thinks there's going to be just people disallowing their kids to use social media until things get better. And I agree. If you took your kids to a water park where kids just kept drowning, you would stop taking your kids there. And eventually, because they weren't getting sales or ticket sales or anything, and they weren't getting people there, they would say, okay, let's just fix the thing. Okay, let's stop filling up the pool that high, and let's put up signs and stuff like that. They would make the changes. At this point, I do think there has to be some collective action, and I'm all for it. They later show an MIT study that shows that using ChatGPT for everyday tasks and for writing essays and things that you should be using your brain to do is eroding cognitive abilities. I agree. One of the things I was so pleased with is at my school, in my class, when we submit papers, they have to run through an AI filter where our professor can look and see where we pull. So we cite our work also, but they can look and see where we pulled our information from. They can also look and see if it looks duplicated, if we've copied, if we've done anything like that, if we've pulled it from somewhere, if there's plagiarism. But they can also detect if AI was used in the creation of it. And I think that has to do with like the language. And I know that's not a great screener, because if you're smart enough, you know how to change it, or how to switch it up so that it may not get detected by AI. There are some very smart people who have low EQ, just like they said, high IQ, low EQ. And so there are people who know how to do it and they don't have the wherewithal to know why they shouldn't. Or at least they have enough wherewithal to know why they shouldn't and not care. And so while I do appreciate that first level is of filtering is there, it just points to a bigger problem of these people are going to become, these students are going to become our doctors. These students are going to become our scientists. These students are going to become our politicians. If they can't write essays and properly articulate their thoughts, we are in big trouble. Thank you so much for watching the SharionSade YouTube channel. I appreciate you watching my content. If you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video by hitting the thumbs up. Please don't forget to subscribe by hitting the subscribe button. And don't forget to comment along the way. If you feel so inclined, please don't forget to share so that more people can find us. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Now let's get back to the video. But I want to get into some of the fun stuff. So Hasan Minhaj asked Prince Harry, what does he like to binge watch? And Prince Harry said, that's classified. But there was this little Gilmore Girls picture floating around. So I don't know, maybe. He asked Harry, what's the most American thing you do? He said, surf. He asked Harry if he drinks Coors Light. No. He asked Harry, does he wear shorts to restaurants? Why did he ask him? Where did that question even come from? What is that? Harry said no. And he said it's because he doesn't have the legs for shorts. Harry, I saw you on that surfboard. You have legs for shorts. Don't let anybody fool you. You have great legs. But he went on to say he has chicken legs. And then right below Harry's name, they put has chicken legs or no legs for shorts. I said, that doesn't have to become part of his bio. Okay. And so then Hasan decided to make Harry say a bunch of things in an American accent. And if Harry did not sound like Siri, Harry sounded like a male Siri trying to say those American accents or things in American accents. That cracked me up. I also appreciated that when Hasan asked him to say an American accent, he said, from what part of America? Spoken like a true American, because we don't all sound the same. Now, where they had my heart, y'all already know, where they had my heart was when Prince Harry pulled out y'all. When Harry said y'all, I nearly did a backflip. I said, see, I knew he was my cousin and I knew he was a Texan. I knew it. Now, listen, Texans aren't the only ones who say y'all, and we're not the only ones that say yeehaw. But because I'm selfish, I'm going to go ahead and claim him. He can live in California all he wants, but that man is a Texan at heart. When they put the cowboy hat on him, I said, oh, he fits right in. Give that man a 10-gallon and a horse and let's roll. He said, y'all. He said, yeehaw. And his yeehaw sounded good. It did. I will give him the stamp of approval. Also, Hasan asked him, did he have any plans to become an American citizen? I don't know why that question keeps getting asked of him. Maybe I'm missing something. Can y'all explain why people keep asking him that? Because he's answered it a couple of times and he said no. It's not in his current plans, which leaves room for in the future I might, but why? Why would he? I don't understand why he would need to. Also, when he got here, I mean, hell, before he got here, I had already decided that he was an American and he was a Texan. That was my choice. And because I have that authority, nothing's really going to change that. He can just say, oh no, Sharion said I could be a Texan, and everybody will be fine with it. But yeah, people keep asking him that and he keeps saying, no, it's not in the plans yet, but no, that's not on his docket at the moment. But when he pulled out, come on, y'all, I said, oh, there's his citizenship right there. There is no going back. When you slip a y'all in conversation, you're here. You are here for good. I also have to say, I'm used to hearing Prince Harry speak. So he just sounds like Harry to me. I don't necessarily clock his accent just because I listen to a lot of what he and Meghan have to say. So I don't necessarily even hear the accent necessarily. I just hear him sounding like him. But when he tried to speak in an American accent, I was heartbroken because the charm of Harry and that accent, I didn't realize how close to my heart that was. I love that he has his accent and I love that he sounds so posh all the time. And so when he tried to speak like an American, I said, you can keep y'all and you can keep yeehaw and your 10-gallon, but please always say Basel. I need you to say Basel. But no, I need him to keep the accent because that is part of his charm. And then Hasan wants to be on the cover of Men's Health magazine. Harry said they could try to work that out for him. And he said, but Men's Health magazine always has a lot of abs, and that is personally affecting or an attack on his mental health. And then he puts up this photo. I can't remember who the photo was of someone else who was on the cover who had abs. And then he put the photo of Gumby. And that is a very millennial joke. I was like, not Gumby made an appearance. Anyway, that cracked me up. Hasan would look fine on Men's Health magazine. So would Prince Harry. I would love to see both of them on the cover of that. That would be wonderful. Anyway, that is essentially the whole interview from my perspective. Those are the things that I noted. Again, this was a very long interview. There was a lot going on and I did not catch all of it. So I still ask. I'm not saying that you should. I am asking you to go watch the whole interview. You will not be disappointed. It is incredible. So that is all I have for y'all today. Harry and Meghan went to a Dodgers game for their date night. So as we leave this video, I'm going to be sharing that footage after this of them at the Dodgers game. And they were there with Magic and Cookie Johnson. So, well, they weren't there with them, but they took a picture with them while they were there. Meghan had what looked to be one of the most delicious looking hot dogs ever. And I think it's because I'm keto. But I damn near bit my phone when I saw that hot dog. But anyway, they look like they had a wonderful time. It was great to see they were out and about on their date night. And if you have an Instagram and you don't follow Meghan, it's at Meghan. She posted this directly to her stories. So she speaks directly to us. So I highly recommend following her if you aren't already. That is all I have. If you listened to this point in the video, thank you. I know I'm long-winded, but I had a lot of thoughts about this incredible interview. If you haven't already, I ask that you please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and if you haven't, please don't forget to share so that more people can find us. That's all I have. Thanks for watching, and I will see y'all next time. Bye. How you
doing? What's looking at?